Hey everyone, tonight we're diving into one of the least enviable roles in medieval Europe, the executioner. And that's saying something in a time when plague survivor and rat catcher were viable career options. From wielding the sword of justice to being feared, cursed and ostracized, the life of a medieval executioner was a strange and brutal contradiction, necessary yet never embraced. Before we get started, feel free to like the video and subscribe, but only if you genuinely enjoy the content. Drop a comment with where you're watching from and what time it is. It's always interesting to see our global community. Now dim the lights, maybe turn on a fan for ambiance, and let's begin tonight's exploration. You've just been born. Congratulations. You're the newest member of a medieval executioner's family. While most newborns are destined to grow into bakers, butchers, or maybe monks if fortune favors them, you're tucked into a cradle beside a whetstone and an axe. In the Middle Ages, execution wasn't a job you applied for. No applications, no town hall interviews. It was passed down like an unfortunate family legacy. If your father was an executioner, then so were you. That was it. No dreams of being a wandering bard or a humble cobbler. Your future ended at the chopping block. From a young age, you're treated with suspicion. Other children run from you at the well. Adults whisper when you pass, as though your small hands are already blood-stained. Symbolically, for now, you grow up in a home where dinner conversations revolve not around "how was your day?" but "how many swings should it take?" Your toys might include tiny gallows, and your bedtime stories feature drawing and quartering more often than fairy tale endings. And it's not just the occupation, it's the reputation. You could be kind, gentle, even educated, and still be viewed as someone who threatens poultry in the night. Your last name alone might be enough to bar you from churches, bakeries, or bathhouses. Cleanliness and salvation are luxuries reserved for others. But there are silver linings. You're unlikely to be bullied. Nobody wants to provoke the executioner's child. You might not be liked, but you'll be respected, like thunder or sharp steel. Welcome to your life. You didn't ask for it, but it's yours, permanently. So, here you are, born, blessed, and immediately burdened with inherited trauma. You're part of the most essential and least welcomed profession in medieval society. Other kids grow up learning to churn butter or tend sheep. You grow up learning to be avoided, especially during flu season. From early on, villagers avert their gaze. You're 6 years old, but already seen as a symbol of death. And no, it's not a choice. Executioner isn't a job you pick. There's no medieval job fair with a booth reading, "Love justice, hate parties, join us." If your father held the axe, you will too. People whisper when you walk past, even before you've performed your first beheading. The blacksmith's kid gets sweets. You get crossed arms and space in church, assuming you're even allowed inside. At family dinners, the conversation skips small talk and heads straight for, "Did you oil the gallows chain?" Your bedtime stories involve heretical dragons getting executed. Your toys, miniature scaffolds. Even marriage prospects are limited. Most families wouldn't let their daughters near you, let alone down the aisle. Of course, there are benefits. No one picks on the executioner's kid. Even the town bully doesn't want to risk ending up as target practice. You develop strength, composure, and a stare that gets you out of social obligations. Not that you're invited to many. You're not. Just born, you're branded. You didn't choose this life, it chose you, and it won't let go. By the time you can grow a beard or handle a blade, one fact is clear. The town needs you, but would rather you remain unseen, tucked away behind a curtain, a hill, or a convenient moral excuse. As a medieval executioner, you are society's contradiction. You do the tasks no one else will touch, and in return you get suspicion, silence, and the occasional distant blessing. You're treated like a haunted well, helpful in crisis, but unnerving the rest of the time. Need someone disemboweled? They In call you, need a wedding guest? Not a chance. You're the solution to problems no one wants to own. Once the sentence is carried out, the crowd disperses, quickly forgetting the man who did the deed. In official documents, you're the blade of justice. In tavern gossip, you're the grim man who chats with skulls. Save a child from drowning, and someone will still whisper, "But how many has he killed?" To others, you are both execution and fear. A living reminder that the law has teeth, sharp, visible ones. Even the nobility avoids you. They'll pay you in silver and toast the law, but you won't be invited to their banquets unless they want a demonstration during dinner. Make one mistake, botch an execution, fumble a torture, and suddenly the crowd turns. You're not a person. You're an instrument, quickly discarded when the music changes. So yes, the town needs you, but only in the shadows. Come in quietly, leave before dawn. While other boys learn to farm, forge, or read, your education is different. No scripture, no sewing, just the mechanics of death. You're taught to sever spines cleanly. Precision is vital. Fail, and it's not just a life lost. It's your reputation, gone before it began. Your mentor, likely your father or another veteran with arms, like Oak, teaches you the art of never slipping, especially not in front of a crowd. Because while everyone claims to hate your work, they still critique your every move, like judges at a grim tournament. Your training includes technique, because a missed neck turns law into farce. Anatomy, to know where the body gives and where it resists. Stage presence, because every execution is a performance. You're the main act, the reason the town square fills. It's like a public spectacle, only dessert is replaced with dismemberment. There's no real practice dummy unless you count pigs or unlucky traitors. You learn by doing, and everyone remembers your first time, especially if you hesitate or miss. You're trained to be composed, precise, and unflinching, but nobody teaches you how to cope. No mental health resources, no time off. No guide on how to forget severed heads. You sharpen your blade, swallow your guilt, and move on. In return, not thanks, not admiration, just uneasy stares and extra coins. You're trained not just to kill, but to carry the weight, silently. Picture this. It's a sunny market morning. Bakers shout prices, blacksmiths clang, children play. Then you appear. The crowd parts like you carry the plague, and a head. Sometimes you do. Even when you're just shopping for turnips, people clear out. In some towns, executioners were banned or strongly discouraged from entering markets. Sometimes you could only shop after hours. Other times, vendors left your goods in a corner, like a cursed medieval takeout. Touching anything was risky. Merchants might handle your coins with tongs or refuse them altogether. You could hand over clean silver and they'd act like it was dipped in poison. Children are pulled away, crosses are made. A fishwife might spit close enough to make her disgust clear. Touch bread, no one else will. Brush an apple, that whole crate is doomed. Eventually, most executioners found someone else to do their shopping. A servant, a family member. Anyone with less baggage, so you retreat to your home, which is not in town, not even near it. You live beyond the gate, past the gallows, next to the boars. It's not just emotional isolation, it's legal. You're not allowed inside city walls. You're more exiled NPC than villager. Why? A mix of superstition, religion, and good old double standards. The same people who call on you by day won't risk your bad energy lingering at night. Your house is near the execution grounds. Convenient for the town, not so much for you. You live in the literal shadow of your work, creaking gallows, circling crows, sometimes corpses still hanging within view of breakfast. Technically, the city gave you the home. In practice, it's a pile of timber dumped in a field, drafty, damp, and far from welcome. It might be the only home in Christendom with a doormat reading, "Abandon hope ye who enter here." This job isn't about visitors or neighbors or casual strolls through town. No merchants stop by, no monks passing through. It's just you, your tools, and the occasional raccoon that doesn't respect personal space. You might catch the sound of church bells, but never the hum of the town square. You're close enough to serve the people, but always too far to be part of them. When storms roll in, no one comes to check on you. The town only remembers you exist when someone needs a final, irreversible sentence carried out. You live beyond the walls, seen only when absolutely necessary. Like thunder, distant, functional, and best kept at arm's length. You're an executioner. You reside on the outskirts. People treat your handshake like a threat, and shopping for groceries requires diplomacy. But surely you can find solace in family, right? Well, kind of. Executioners in the Middle Ages did have families, but forming them was a struggle. Once people knew your line of work, your dating options dried up faster than a heretic through a trap door. No one wants to marry someone whose job involves cleaning up arterial spray. Respectable households avoid you. Fathers grip their daughters tighter. Even the village drunk who once proposed to a goat thinks you're too much. Your dating pool? Shallow. Usually the only ones willing to marry you are other social outcasts, grave diggers, knackers, lepers. Maybe a widow with battered expectations. Romantic dinners? Try secretive conversations in alleyways where no one can see her speaking to you. If you do manage to start a family, your children inherit more than your name. They inherit the trade. Sons learn to wield the blade with exactness. Daughters grow up marked by the family's reputation, shunned before they can form friendships. It's not a family, it's a support crew held together by necessity. They can't join festivals. They can't walk through town as a unit. They can't even pretend to live a normal Sunday. If they attend church, they sit in the back, if they're allowed in at all. Even salvation has gatekeepers. The isolation wears on you. You love your children, but you're passing down a legacy drenched in blood and solitude. The family tree doesn't branch, it loops. Same profession, same rejection, same invisible boundary between you and everyone else. There are no proud portraits, no noble crests, just a long line of masked figures not hiding their faces but erased from view by a world that never wanted to see them. So after a week of chopping heads, disemboweling the condemned, and maybe nervously rinsing your blade with holy water, you seek confession, right? Light a candle, say a prayer, cleanse your conscience. Not exactly. To the medieval church, you're a paradox. You deliver justice. You uphold divine law. But you also kill people, which, inconveniently, is a sin. So while you serve God and the state, you're still unwelcome in his house. Some priests won't hear your confession. Others demand ritual cleansing before you can even enter, though no bath can scrub off stigma. Holy Communion? Out of the question. That's for the pure, and your soul carries a permanent blemish. It's a cruel irony. You carry out justice. With official backing, yet you're treated like a sadist. Even lepers, who at least had a diagnosis, received more kindness. Church weddings? Probably not. Christenings? Maybe, if the priest is feeling bold and no one's watching. Funerals? Don't count on it. Some executioners weren't even buried inside the cemetery, but outside its walls, next to suicides and excommunicates. Spiritually, you're nowhere. Surrounded by death, with no path to redemption. You can't confess, can't mourn, can't unburden, no friar to cry to, no candle to light, just silence. So you drink, or you scream into the forest, or you sharpen your blade again. Even when you're sure the trial was fair, the law was clear, you return home not knowing if you're damned by man, God, or both. Because in a world where everyone sins, you're the one who turned it into a trade. Now, imagine doing all of this in front of a crowd. Executing isn't just law, it's performance. Justice, ritual, and a morbid kind of public entertainment. And you're the headliner. No one cares if your wrist aches or the blade is dull from last week's double hanging. They expect a clean swing. One swift cut. That's the gold standard. Miss even slightly and the murmurs start. Swing twice, they groan. A third time, they boo. One kid starts crying. Someone throws an onion. And you feel it. The failure, the shame, the body still twitching, the blood going everywhere, the mess. You weren't trained for this emotional wreckage that comes with turning someone's final moment into a town disaster. Sometimes the blade catches. Sometimes the condemned flinches. Sometimes your hand slips. And in those moments, everything you've built, your skill, your reputation, can collapse. People don't care how difficult it is. They just want it to look effortless. Executioners must be exact, stoic, unflinching. Any slip is weakness, and weakness spreads. Rumors move fast. He needed 2 swings. He looked nervous. The man suffered. Soon you become the cautionary tale. Don't end up like him, the guy who couldn't finish the job. So you go home and clean your blade. You replay every second, every groan, every misstep, and even when your body stops shaking, the memory lingers. Because here the axe doesn't just fall on the condemned, it hovers over you too. After the crowd clears, the square returns to normal. Cabbage sales resume. You should head home, but you can't. The axe was just the beginning. Now comes the aftermath. The messy, thankless cleanup. You're the one burning the body, burying it in a shallow grave, or dumping it under the gallows. No ceremony, no prayers. Just a hope the dogs don't dig it up, no gloves, no rest, just you scrubbing away what's left of a life. You're the janitor of death, the last step in justice. And no one thanks you. The same townspeople who cheered the execution avoid you afterward because you smell like ashes and rot. There are other tasks too: torture, branding, public humiliations. That's your job. Sometimes you're reading scripture while whipping someone, spiritually unraveling as you multitask. And when a nobleman needs something handled discreetly, guess who gets the call? No witnesses, no mistakes, just the quiet knowledge that if you talk, you'll be next. Executioner may be your title, but your duties cover everything horrifying the town doesn't want to think about. When the audience leaves, the clergy retreat, and the clerks put down their pens, you're still there, finishing what no one else will. But all of this comes with one advantage: you get paid, sometimes handsomely. Executions, torture, dismemberments, they come with silver. You may even earn more than most peasants. Add a few bribes for speed or silence, and you're doing well financially. But spending that money, that's another story. You walk into a tavern, coins clinking, and the room goes silent. The barkeep pours your ale like he's afraid you'll poison the cup. You tip him well. He still avoids eye contact. Buy a tunic and the merchant hands it to you with tongs. Your money's real, but to them, it's cursed. Blood money. You tried to give to the church once. They accepted it, but then hired someone else to clean the relics just in case. Sure, you can build a nice home, maybe even get a chair with cushions. But the more wealth you earn, the more isolated you become. You're rich, but like a dragon, hoarding treasure in a cave. Alone, feared. People think money compensates for the shame, that it balances your conscience. But it doesn't. It doesn't erase memories. It doesn't buy forgiveness. It doesn't make you human again. In the Middle Ages, money doesn't buy peace. It buys distance, silence, the right to drink alone in a corner without being asked to leave. And deep down, you know the truth. Every coin in your pocket was paid. For with someone else's final breath, in a small town, everyone knows who you are. They know your house, your voice, your footsteps. But they don't know you. You might love music, or have childhood memories, or carve wood with surprising skill. None of it matters. You're reduced to one thing: the blade. Even off duty, you're avoided. You walk through the market and people cross the street. No one asks how you're holding up. No one wants to know if it haunts you. Because in their eyes, you're not a person. You're the axe with legs. It's a strange paradox. Everyone knows your name, but no one knows you. You exist in every moral tale, every bedtime warning, but you're never part of the world you protect. Walk into a tavern and voices drop. Leave, and they rise again. Laughter resumes after you're gone. No one checks in on you. No one wonders if you're okay. Speak too much and you're disturbing. Say nothing and you're cold. Smile and you're terrifying. So eventually you play the part they expect. You become the grim figure they already see. Quiet, still, stone-faced. Not you withdraw. Because while your name is known by all, not one person truly sees you. You're a myth that breathes. A necessary ghost. And after another day of severed limbs, stained boots and public spectacle, you return to your little hut, just outside the walls, where silence always waits. There's still a faint smell of iron. You remove your cloak, set down your axe and sit on the edge of your straw mattress, trying to remember how to feel like a person. But the nightmares are already waiting. You lie back, close your eyes, and there they are, the faces. Not heroes, not monsters, just people. Some screamed, others wept, a few whispered prayers with trembling lips. Some met your gaze, silently saying, "You know this is wrong." But the hardest ones were quiet, calm, resigned. They accepted their fate faster than you ever could. You relive every swing, feel every bone give way. Hear the reactions of the crowd, revulsion, excitement. See the bodies drop in slow motion, like limp puppets with cut strings. There's no relief, not in sleep, not in silence, not in drink. You've tried all three. Now you flinch at everyday sounds, the clatter of firewood, the snap of rope, the groan of wooden steps. Everything reminds you, everything echoes, and you never forget the ones you botched. The blade that paused, the stroke that went wrong, the groan from someone who should have gone quickly. You carry that? No one checks on you. There's no medieval therapist for post-execution trauma. You don't write letters. You don't cry in public. You just stare at the fire, hoping your soul goes numb before your hands do. And sometimes, late. At night you ask yourself, what if they were innocent? What if justice failed? What if I failed? But you know it doesn't change anything. The verdict was read, the crowd gathered, the axe fell, and the nightmares stayed. You were trained to kill, not to grieve. But your dreams never got the message, so you wake with clenched fists, a pounding head, and a feeling that no amount of scrubbing can clean. Because the blood's no longer on. Your hands, it's in your mind. What no one tells you when you become an executioner is this: you don't retire. There's no farewell dinner, no pension, no commemorative plaque with a golden axe. One day, your hands start to shake. You miss your mark. You dream too loudly, and the town starts whispering, not out of sympathy but concern. Not for your well-being, but for efficiency. To them, you're not a person. You're a mechanism, a cog in the justice machine. As long as the blade is sharp and the swing steady, they nod at you from afar and pretend you're invisible. But the second your hand trembles, the moment you pause a little too long, they notice, and suddenly you're not dependable. You're a liability, not because you're breaking down, but because you're ruining the show. The crowd didn't come for morality. They came for precision, so the town shifts quietly. Maybe your apprentice, your son, or a distant cousin starts doing small jobs. A flogging here, a branding there, eventually a hanging. No one tells you you've been replaced. You just stop. Getting called. The money slows. The stares turn from fear to quiet pity, the worst kind. Because it means you're no longer needed, and when you're finally forgotten, it isn't by chance, it's by design. You fade into a cottage outside the walls. Your tools rust beside you. Your once steady hands tremble lifting a spoon. Your knees ache from a lifetime kneeling at the block. No one visits. Your name becomes a vague footnote. Remember the old executioner? What was his name again? Didn't he lose his mind? And when death finally comes, likely alone, the church doesn't know whether to bury you inside the gates or under a tree somewhere, because you were never truly part of the town. You were a service, and services, once worn out, are quietly discarded. At first, the job made sense. The condemned were thieves, murderers, heretics. You were the hand of law, the sharp edge of justice. You didn't question. You executed, publicly, efficiently, without pause. But over time, doubt crept in. A man sentenced for stealing bread. He had 5 children. No defense, just hunger. A woman accused of witchcraft for praying in the wrong language. Her eyes filled with confusion as the noose closed. Then came the nobles, issuing death orders not out of guilt, but for politics, power, and silence. You began to see the pattern. You weren't just executing criminals, you were burying secrets. The block wasn't a tool for justice. It was a filter, removing the inconvenient, the powerless, and you were the stamp that made it final. You wanted to believe in structure, in right and wrong, but the voices that once pronounced guilt now rang hollow. You'd heard cheers while a man screamed, watched magistrates bargain like traders over lives, and they always told you, it's not your place to judge, just to carry out the sentence. But what if the sentence was wrong? There's no forum, no confession, just you alone sharpening your blade, wondering how many died so someone could send a message, and you can't speak. Not just because it's unsafe, but because no one would believe you. You're the man behind the hood. You don't have opinions, only orders. So you bury justice, one cut at a time, not out of desire, but duty. Because in this world, truth is a luxury. And you're just the broom that sweeps it out of sight, and worst of all, you've started to realize you weren't the sword of justice. You were its gravedigger. You didn't serve glory or gold or even justice. You served duty. The grim, blood-stained kind no one toasts at banquets, and when your end comes, it's not poetic. No grand final words, no family by your side, just a cough that lingers. A slow fade on a straw mattress, still smelling of iron and damp rope. One last breath and nothing. No bells, no priest, no tears. Maybe a local boy finds your body. Or maybe no one notices until the smell becomes an issue. The town clerk writes one sentence on the back of a tax ledger. Executioner deceased. Replacement pending. No funeral. No headstone, maybe a wooden marker if someone remembers. But it won't last the winter. You're not buried inside the churchyard, of course. You go outside the gates, the same ones you were never allowed through in life. Executioners were considered unclean, useful, disposable. You buried hundreds. But no one truly buries you. The town moves on fast. There's always another blade. Another son, another unlucky soul who inherits the role like a curse passed through generations. One day people might mention you in passing. The one who beheaded that baron, the one who drank alone. Or worse, what was his name again? Your legacy isn't legend or lineage. It's silence, it's absence. It's the gap you filled that no one wants to remember. And maybe that's fitting. You spent your life making sure the guilty were forgotten. You just didn't expect to be forgotten with them. So in the end, your death matches your life. Necessary, but never mourned. Because in medieval society, you weren't meant to be remembered. You were meant to be tolerated. And now, at last, you're not. So you've finally arrived. After crossing arid deserts, dodging bandits and battling dysentery, you've made it to gold country. Congratulations. Now the real struggle begins. Mining wasn't a glamorous treasure hunt, it was grueling, exhausting. Labor. Forget overflowing chests of gold coins. This meant long days, knee-deep in freezing rivers, swirling pans of gravel, hoping for even a glint of gold. Most found nothing. For every strike, there were 1,000 empty pans and 10,000 sawbacks. Initially, it was all about placer mining, scooping gravel from riverbeds and letting water do the work. But once the easy gold was gone, miners escalated their methods. They adopted rockers, sluices, and eventually hydraulic mining, a destructive technique that used high-powered water cannons to obliterate entire hillsides. It wrecked the land and polluted rivers, but it delivered results. Mining camps were chaotic. Picture a mishmash of tents, shacks, and saloons, stitched together with desperation and mud. Hygiene was optional, food scarce, but whiskey always flowed. Violence lingered just below the surface. Disputes over mining claims escalated quickly, especially when few trusted the courts and everyone carried a shovel. Disease thrived in these. Unsanitary camps. Cholera and dysentery were common. If the water didn't kill you, a badly cooked squirrel or infected wound might. Medical care was virtually non-existent, just self-proclaimed healers armed with moonshine and guesswork. Then there were the prices. A shovel that cost $2 in New York could go for $30 here. Eggs were luxuries. Laundry, dirt was the default. And if you were lucky enough to strike gold, keeping it was another challenge. Robbery was rampant. One day you had gold dust, the next. A day it and maybe your bunkmate were gone, yet people kept coming. The promise, the risk, the sheer possibility drew crowds. Where gold appeared, people followed. And where people went, disorder was never far behind. The gold rush didn't just spawn camps, it gave rise to entire towns. Places like Placerville, Marysville, and yes, Deadwood exploded in population. They were called boom towns, and the name fit. They appeared overnight and often vanished just as quickly. Law and order were often absent. Judges were rare, sheriffs even rarer. And with so much gold around, desperation thrived. Claim jumpers were a constant threat. Even if you secured a good claim, someone might steal it, or worse, kill you for it. Enter the vigilantes. In lawless areas, citizens took matters into their own hands. These groups formed to deliver justice, or sometimes just protect their own interests. Trials were rare, punishments swift. A thief or cheat could be hanged on the spot. It wasn't law, it was convenience. Saloons became the center of social life. Gambling, drinking, brawls, and the occasional gunshot were standard fare. And for those seeking companionship, so-called soiled doves ran brothels, charging steep fees while surviving a harsh male-dominated world. Not everyone was lawless, though. Many sought to build real communities. Churches, schools, and newspapers slowly emerged. San Francisco even established a vigilante committee to curb corruption, eventually becoming more influential than the official government. Interestingly, gold wasn't often used to buy things directly. It was too easy to shave or steal. Instead, people traded in gold dust, carefully weighed on brass scales at bar counters. A pinch might buy dinner, a pouch might buy a night to forget. Still, boomtowns didn't last. Once the gold was gone, people moved on, leaving ghost towns behind. While many pursued wealth, others paid a much higher price. The California gold rush wasn't just about opportunity. It was also a story of displacement, violence, and injustice. Native American tribes were the first victims. For millennia, they had lived in these regions. But the gold rush drove them out with ruthless speed. Forests were cleared, rivers poisoned, and hunting grounds lost to towns and miners. Some tribes were forced into servitude under the pretense of apprenticeships. Others were massacred. The state even funded militias to remove native populations. In just 20 years, California's indigenous population fell by nearly 90%. Then came waves of immigrants, especially the Chinese. By the early 1850s, tens of thousands had arrived, hoping to earn money and support their families. Instead, they met with hostility, racial prejudice, and punishing taxes. A 1850 law, the Foreign Miners' Tax, was aimed squarely at them. They were denied land ownership, barred from testifying in court against white men, and taxed heavily just to mine. Still, many Chinese miners endured. They formed close-knit communities, took over abandoned claims, and later helped build essential infrastructure, including the Transcontinental Railroad. Mexican and Latin American miners faced similar hostility. Though experienced and often with legal claims, they were forcibly driven out, labeled with slurs, and stripped of rights. African Americans, both free and enslaved, also ventured west, some achieving success in business and agriculture. But racial boundaries constantly shifted, and freedom came with no certainty. While slavery was technically illegal in California, many exploited loopholes to bring enslaved people under other names. The gold rush reshaped America, revealing both its ambitions and contradictions. It was indeed a land of opportunity. But not for all. Gold didn't just sparkle, it fueled the engines of a rapidly transforming nation. By 1852, gold exports topped $80 million, billions by today's standards. That kind of wealth filled banks, drove commerce and energized industries. California, once an overlooked frontier, was suddenly the focus of national attention and ambition. But there was a catch. California wasn't yet a state. After its acquisition, in 1848 post-Mexican-American War, its governance was in disarray. The gold-fueled population surge forced action. In 1850, just 2 years after the first major gold find, California became the 31st U.S. state. That's rapid even by expansionist standards. Notably, California entered as a free state, banning slavery. This decision disrupted the delicate balance between free and slave states, infuriating the South and energizing the North, nudging the nation ever closer to civil war. Meanwhile, California's economy kept booming, not just from gold, but from entrepreneurial foresight. A German immigrant, Levi Strauss, created durable work pants for miners, blue jeans. Leland Stanford sold supplies, then helped build the Transcontinental Railroad and founded Stanford University. The railroad connected California's gold to eastern markets. Before it, journeys took months, with trains only days. The gold rush didn't just bring prosperity, it built infrastructure, expanded migration, and cemented California's importance. With that growth came competition over land, resources, and power. The earliest miners had minimal impact, just pans, shovels, and rocker boxes. But as surface gold vanished, aggressive methods took over. By the 1850s, hydraulic mining changed the game. Large water cannons, monitors, blasted hillsides, reducing mountains to muddy sludge in search of gold flakes. It was fast and effective, but ecologically devastating. Forests were stripped, hills eroded, rivers turned brown and clogged with sediment. The Central Valley flooded not from storms, but from displaced earth. Crops failed, fish died, towns were swamped. Mercury used in gold extraction seeped into soil and rivers, poisoning ecosystems. Even today, mercury from that era remains in California's waterways. Eventually, the destruction drew pushback. In the 1880s, Central Valley farmers sued a mining company in Woodruff vs. North Bloomfield Gravel Mining Co. They won. By 1884, hydraulic mining was essentially outlawed, the first major environmental ruling in U.S. history. But the damage was already done. Hills, forests, and rivers had been altered forever. Still, this moment planted the seeds of American environmental awareness. Calls for preservation and responsibility would eventually lead to national parks and conservation laws. The gold rush fulfilled dreams, but also left deep scars. By the late 1850s, the richest veins had been tapped, boomtowns emptied. Miners traded their tools for plows, pens, and printing presses. Yet the gold rush didn't fade. It evolved. It became legend. Newspapers glorified it. Dime novels romanticized grubby miners as rugged pioneers. The truth was messier, but myths thrive without facts. The image stuck. The lone prospector, weathered hat, long beard, gold pan in hand. Never mind that most died poor or forgotten. The myth endured. California became synonymous with opportunity. The American dream now had a destination. Even modern expressions like striking it rich, panning for gold, and the mother. Loda echoes from 1850s mining camps. Levi's jeans, born of miner necessity, became global fashion. San Francisco, once wild and lawless, reinvented itself as a beacon of success. Tourist brochures now celebrate gold country. Old mining towns reenact the past for curious visitors. The gold rush built fortunes, shattered lives, and reshaped the land. But above all, it etched itself into the American story, and parades honoring a time that had nearly broken them. The gold rush also left a strong mark on American cinema. Westerns romanticized the image of the solitary miner. Brave, kind, fighting off claim jumpers, charming saloon girls. The portrayal wasn't accurate, but it sold movie tickets and helped reinforce the myth of the frontier in pop culture. Behind these polished legends were harsher realities: environmental destruction, racial exclusion, and countless lives lost chasing fleeting riches. Still, the dream persisted, and maybe that was the real story, because the gold rush wasn't only about getting rich. It was about hope, the belief that with enough courage, luck, or grit, you could completely transform your life. Although the California gold rush officially ended in 1855, its effects never truly faded. California, once a distant Mexican frontier, quickly became a powerful force. In just a few years, it achieved statehood, changed the direction of the U.S. economy, and attracted people from all corners of the world. But even more than that, it became a symbol of reinvention, ambition, and the promise of something still hidden just beneath the surface. The influx of people didn't only bring miners. It brought builders, teachers, merchants, and dreamers. Many former prospectors became farmers, business owners, and newspaper publishers. The infrastructure built for gold hunting was soon used for expansion. Wagon roads became trade routes. Camps turned into cities. Makeshift shelters became permanent homes. San Francisco transformed from a muddy settlement into a thriving urban center almost overnight. But the gold rush left more than just physical changes. It left an emotional imprint. That same risk-it-all mindset would later drive Hollywood, Silicon Valley, and even the counterculture movements. Whether it was movies, microchips, or mind-expanding substances, the motivation was the same. Come west. Try something bold. And maybe, just maybe, you'll strike gold. Even the tech boom of the late 1900s and early 2000s echoed the same spirit. Young entrepreneurs, full of belief and caffeine, poured into California with nothing but laptops and dreams. Not so different from those early miners with their pickaxes and hope. But the gold rush also reminds us of the cost of ambition. Native communities were displaced, ecosystems were damaged, and inequality was baked into the system from the start. For every person who found success, there were hundreds left behind, forgotten in history's margins. Today, traces of that era remain. Ghost towns, rusted tools, and rugged trails still stretch across the Sierra Nevada. Museums showcase the artifacts. Schools teach the legends. Tourism campaigns sell the fantasy. But the deeper impact lies in the national mindset. The gold rush gave America a lasting sense of urgency. The belief that something better, bigger, richer is always out there. You just have to go chase it. So when you hear the term California Dream, remember, it all began with a sparkle in the soil and thousands of men willing to risk everything for a chance at something more. Long before treaties were signed or laws were written, trade was already shaping the ancient world. It didn't begin with merchant ships or trade maps, but with footsteps, paths carved by early humans as they searched for what they lacked. Centuries before the Silk Road, the Amber Road, or the Spice Route, there were simpler trails carrying salt, stone, and survival. Picture a time before cities, even before writing. Humans lived in small, scattered tribes, trading goods out of pure necessity. One group had flint, another had shells, and another had salt, an incredibly valuable preservative before refrigeration. Somehow these resources traveled, hand to hand, tribe to tribe. Across harsh landscapes, the proof is in the artifacts. Obsidian from Anatolia found hundreds of miles away, Baltic amber buried in graves deep in Mycenaean Greece. Clearly, long before borders or governments, goods were already moving. These early trade paths weren't engineered, they were natural. Rivers served as highways. Mountain passes became key corridors. Forest trails connected one community to the next. With time, these paths grew more structured. Hunters turned into traders, and traders into messengers, carrying not just goods, but also stories, news, and even early spiritual ideas. Trade became more than just goods. It became the vehicle for knowledge. It's how farming techniques, metalwork, and artistic styles traveled. A tribe that learned copper smelting from another could transform its whole lifestyle. A pattern seen on a traded pot could inspire new local art. These exchanges took generations, but they were revolutionary. And they happened before anyone wrote a single word. Many future trade routes followed the same old paths. Parts of the Silk Road, the Arabian incense trails, all walked first by prehistoric people. These invisible highways were the ancient world's nervous system. They connected communities long before the idea of a map even existed. By 3000 BCE, early barter trails had evolved into something more organized. Cities, kingdoms, and empires began engaging in structured trade. Nowhere was this change more dramatic than in Mesopotamia, the land between the Tigris and Euphrates rivers, often called the cradle of civilization. It was also the cradle of commerce. The Sumerians, Akkadians, and Babylonians were more than just farmers and builders. They were also traders, and they understood the importance of tracking it all. That's why, around this time, they developed cuneiform, one of the earliest writing systems. At first, it was simply used to record trade, how much grain was exchanged, how many goats traded, or how much beer delivered to temples. In short, writing emerged from the need to manage trade. Mesopotamian cities lacked many resources, so they imported timber from the Levant, copper from Oman, tin from Iran, and lapis lazuli from Afghanistan. In return, they sent out textiles, grain, oil, and handcrafted goods. The merchants behind these exchanges weren't adventurers. They were professionals, often backed by temples or royalty, using contracts, ledgers, and shared risk agreements. Mesopotamia's trade flowed by river and road. The Euphrates and Tigris served as main shipping lanes between cities like Uruk, and Babylon. Caravans of donkeys moved goods north toward Anatolia and east toward Elam. Trade wasn't just economic, it was also political. Alliances were built through gifts. Merchants doubled as informal diplomats, carrying messages and maintaining ties between distant lands. This is when the idea of a merchant class began to form. Not nobles, not priests, not warriors, but negotiators and logistic experts who held serious influence. Trade bound cities together, created wealth and sparked innovation. It moved from being a necessity to a full-fledged system, from casual handshakes to formal contracts. While Mesopotamian merchants dominated rivers and roads, a different kind of trade empire was rising at sea: the Phoenicians. By 1200 BCE, these expert sailors from the Levant, modern-day Lebanon, and parts of Syria and Israel had turned the Mediterranean into a bustling maritime network. Phoenicians didn't conquer with armies. They conquered with trade. Their city-states, Tyre, Sidon, and Byblos, were small but fiercely independent, and they shared one major strength: the sea. With limited land and poor farming conditions, they relied on the ocean to thrive. And thrive. They did, Phoenician ships were fast and advanced. They even used biremes with 2 rows of oars to improve speed and efficiency. They traded everything from timber and glass to the famed Tyrian purple dye, extracted from sea snails and valued like gold. But their most enduring legacy wasn't a product. It was their writing system. Their 22-letter consonantal alphabet would later inspire Greek, Latin, Arabic, and Hebrew, the foundation of many modern alphabets. They set up trade outposts from Cyprus to Carthage, Sicily to Spain. Carthage, which would one day rival Rome, began as a Phoenician colony. Their coastal network rivaled land-based empires, and Phoenician trade didn't just move goods, it spread ideas, beliefs, and art. Egyptian scarabs were buried in Spain. Babylonian seals turned up in Greek islands. This web of influence wasn't built by war, but by commerce. Still, the Phoenicians left behind few massive ruins. Their legacy lives quietly, found in shipwrecks, pottery shards, and alphabets we still use. As the Phoenicians ruled the sea, another vital network was emerging far inland. The desert trade. Routes of North Africa and Arabia. These camel caravan routes were ancient lifelines across harsh terrain. What looked like an obstacle became a corridor. Long before paved roads, camel caravans connected sub-Saharan Africa with North Africa, the Levant, and Arabia. They moved gold, salt, incense, ivory, slaves, and stories. The camel, called the ship of the desert, was key. Domesticated around 1000 BCE, the dromedary camel could travel long distances in extreme heat, go days without water, and carry up to 600 pounds. In North Africa, the trans-Saharan trade routes flourished, linking powerful kingdoms like Ghana, Mali, and Songhai. The desert wasn't empty. It was filled with oases, trade towns, and fortified stops. Gold from the Niger basin went north, often traded pound for pound with salt, which was vital in humid regions. Meanwhile, in Arabia, the incense trade flourished. Frankincense and myrrh from southern Arabia, modern Yemen and Oman, were prized. Across Egypt, Mesopotamia, Greece, and Rome, caravans moved along routes like the Incense Road, stopping in cities like Petra and Mecca, long before Islam. These weren't short trips. Some lasted months, even years. Traders faced sandstorms, thieves, and dehydration, but the profits were worth it. Cities like Timbuktu, Gao, and Ubar became wealthy centers of trade, culture, and learning. Though the desert didn't leave towering monuments, it created enduring connections, linking Africa, Arabia, and beyond, step by step, hoofprint by hoofprint, and no ancient trade network reshaped the world or our imagination. Like the Silk Road, stretching over 4,000 miles from China to the Mediterranean, the Silk Road wasn't a single road, but a complex web of trails, mountain passes, and river crossings. It began during China's Han dynasty in the 2nd century BCE, when Emperor Wu sent envoy Zhang Qian westward seeking allies, and instead found trade opportunities. People across Central Asia and beyond were eager for China's top export, silk. Light, strong, and radiant, silk became a sensation from Persia to Rome. Roman elites paid heavily to wear it, then worried it was decadent. But silk was just the start. East and West exchanged goods, ideas, and even illnesses. China sent porcelain, tea, and paper. India offered spices, gems, and Buddhism. Persia supplied carpets, glassware, and horses. Rome and Byzantium sent wine, olive oil, and metalwork. Traders rarely made the entire trip. Goods passed through many hands, like whispers through a chain of markets and caravan stops. Cultural exchange thrived too. Monks, musicians, and missionaries traveled these paths. The Silk Road didn't just move merchandise, it moved medicine, math, astronomy, and stories. The spread of Buddhism from India into China is among its most lasting impacts. Cities like Samarkand, Kashgar, and Dunhuang became melting pots of languages, religions, and art. Empires rose and fell, trying to control parts of this vital network, from the Parthians to the Sogdians to the Mongols, and with it came risks. The Black Death, likely spread along these routes in the 14th century, showed that trade could also carry invisible dangers. While the Silk Road crossed land, the Indian Ocean provided a maritime counterpart, a liquid superhighway that was often faster and more reliable. By 1000 BCE, the Indian Ocean trade network was already thriving, linking East Africa, Arabia, India, Southeast Asia, and eventually China. Unlike unpredictable land routes, the ocean had a rhythm, the monsoon winds. Blowing in one direction in summer and the opposite in winter, they allowed sailors to plan long-distance round trips. A ship could sail from East Africa to India, load up and return, all guided by nature's timing. Months later, with time to spare, traders returned carrying goods from across the known world. From India came black pepper, cotton textiles, carved ivory, and eventually sugar and indigo. Arabia supplied frankincense, myrrh, horses, and dates. East Africa contributed gold, enslaved people, and exotic animal products. From Southeast Asia came highly prized spices, nutmeg, cloves, and cinnamon, worth more per ounce than gold. But this was about more than raw materials. It was about the exchange of ideas. Islam spread along these sea routes not through conquest, but through commerce. Muslim merchants built communities in Indian ports along the Swahili coast, and as far as Indonesia, many local rulers converted to Islam for trade benefits, intertwining faith and economy. Ports like Calicut, Zanzibar, and Malacca became diverse cultural centers, where you could hear Arabic, Tamil, Swahili, and Chinese spoken in a single market. These were not isolated outposts. They were global crossroads long before globalization was a term. Naval technology advanced quickly. The Di Chao, with its triangular sail, became the go-to vessel, fast and agile. Chinese junks, massive multi-deck ships with watertight compartments, joined the fleet, especially during the expeditions of Admiral Zheng He in the 15th century. What made Indian Ocean trade unique wasn't just its size, but its cooperation. Unlike land empires built on conquest, sea trade was mostly based on mutual gain until European powers disrupted that balance. As trade networks matured, empires recognized a key truth. Controlling routes meant controlling wealth. From the Persian Royal Road to Roman highways and Inca mountain paths, overland routes served not just commerce, but power, diplomacy, and administration. The Achaemenid Persians built one of the earliest trade highways. By the 5th century BCE, their royal road stretched over 1,600 miles from Susa to Sardis. It formed the empire's communication backbone, allowing fast movement of troops, messages, and merchants. Relay stations with fresh horses dotted the route, enabling royal messengers to cross it in about a week, unheard of at the time. Merchants also used it, paying tolls that funded the empire. Rome followed suit. All roads lead to Rome wasn't just a phrase, it was strategy. Roman roads were marvels of engineering, paved in stone, sloped for drainage, and marked by milestones. The Via Appia, begun in 312 BCE, connected Rome to southern Italy and became the model for a network that would span over 250,000 miles. These roads supported rapid military deployment, tax collection, and of course, trade. Provincial goods flowed into Rome: Egyptian grain, Spanish silver, Syrian glass, African ivory. Across the ocean, the Incas built their own trade empire, without wheels or horses. Their road system, the Capac Ñan, stretched over 24,000 miles. Through the Andes, linking their mountainous empire from Colombia to Chile. Relay runners called chasquis carried messages and light goods across rope bridges and steep terrain. The Incas used llamas for transport and tightly controlled road use to maintain state dominance over trade. In each of these empires, roads weren't just infrastructure, they were tools of control. They let rulers enforce power, manage economies, and move armies. Traders used them, but always at the discretion of the state. After Rome's fall, many ancient trade routes fell into disuse, yet the drive for profit and connection persisted. The medieval period saw old paths revived and new ones formed by an unexpected mix of travelers, religious pilgrims, crusaders, merchant guilds, and ambitious city-states. Faith motivated many. Pilgrimage routes like the Camino de Santiago became highways for people, goods, and ideas. Pilgrims carried more than belief. They brought money, supplies, and stories. Inns, markets, and settlements grew along these roads, helping local economies thrive. Meanwhile, Islamic empires in the east were flourishing. The Abbasid Caliphate turned cities like Baghdad and Damascus into major trade centers. Muslim merchants expanded into sub-Saharan Africa, Central Asia, and even China, helping revive the Silk Road. Arabic became the common language of trade across 3 continents. In Northern Europe, the Hanseatic League rose to power, a federation of cities like Lübeck, Hamburg, and Bruges. They controlled trade in the Baltic and North Seas, dealing in salt, furs, grain, and timber. With their own navy and legal codes, they were more than traders. They were a trading empire. Italian city-states like Venice and Genoa became key middlemen, perfectly placed between East and West. They moved luxury goods, spices, silks, and gems through their ports, enriching powerful merchant families like the Medici. Then came the Crusades. While they failed to permanently reclaim the Holy Land, they reopened and expanded contact between Europe and the East. Crusaders returned with a taste for silks, spices, and other luxuries. This sparked renewed interest in the trade routes that could supply them. Merchant guilds rose to protect local economies, and trade became more structured. Markets turned into fairs, fairs into towns, towns into cities. Trade wasn't just recovering, it was being formalized. By the late 15th century, the ancient era of trade routes was ending. A new age was emerging, driven by ships, cannons, and global ambitions. But this transition was only possible because of the foundations laid by earlier traders, by camels, carts, and sails guided by stars. When Portugal and Spain began their maritime explorations, they accelerated existing. Global trade, Vasco da Gama's sea route to India in 1498, bypassed the overland Silk Road and disrupted Middle Eastern trade monopolies. Goods like spices, silk, and porcelain now moved directly from Asia to Europe, faster, cheaper, and in greater volume than ever before. Colonial empires followed. The Portuguese set up trading posts from Mozambique to Malacca. The Spanish sailed west and encountered the Americas, extracting vast quantities of gold and silver. Soon, the Dutch and English joined, establishing East India companies that acted as governments, complete with armies and monopolies. Land-based routes like the Silk Road declined in importance, but their legacy endured in the form of cultural exchange, infrastructure, and trade practices. Old trade hubs like Samarkand and Constantinople faded, but were never entirely forgotten. New global cities, Amsterdam, London, New York, emerged, built on the same foundations of connection and commerce. Today's trade networks, railways, highways, air routes, and undersea cables still follow paths carved out by ancient merchants. Modern globalization runs on data and shipping containers, but its roots lie in Phoenician sea routes, Roman roads, and Indian Ocean currents. Trade hasn't only moved goods, it's carried ideas, religions, technologies, and even diseases. The printing press, coffee, algebra, Buddhism, and the compass all spread through commerce. Trade has shaped history. So when you see a cargo ship, crossing the ocean or a freight train speeding by, remember, it's not just about steel and goods. It's the modern echo of a Silk Road caravan, the distant shadow of a Phoenician ship. Humanity in motion, always seeking not just profit, but connection. Tulum isn't your typical Maya city. While many Maya centers are buried deep in jungle, hidden behind thick forests, Tulum stands apart, rising above the Caribbean Sea, perched on a limestone cliff with turquoise waters below. It's a striking view with a powerful story. This was a sacred coastal city that guarded land and sea. Tulum, on the eastern tip of Mexico's Yucatan Peninsula in modern-day Quintana Roo, was one of the last major Maya cities to be built and lived in. It reached its height between the 13th and 15th centuries, just before the Spanish arrived. Despite its late development, Tulum made a big impact on Maya history. Its name means wall in Yucatec Maya, referring to the stone walls that enclose it on three sides. The fourth side opens to the Caribbean Sea. This setup made Tulum highly defensible and symbolically important. Some believe its original name was Zama, meaning City of Dawn, likely due to its alignment with the rising sun. From its cliffs, Maya lookouts could spot trading canoes arriving from places like Cuba, Belize, and Honduras. Tulum was a key point in a widespread maritime trade network, dealing in jade, obsidian, salt, honey, textiles, and dried fish. It linked inland cities like Khobar and Chichen Itza to coastal trade routes. But Tulum wasn't just a commercial hub, it was also a spiritual center. Every structure, altar, and pathway was carefully placed, often aligned with stars and sacred dates on the Maya calendar. It was a city that studied the skies as closely as the sea. Even after its decline, Tulum's ruins remained visible from the ocean, reminding sailors of a people who once charted the heavens. Though smaller than inland Maya cities like Chichen Itza or Tikal, Tulum's compact size is misleading. Its structures were positioned with purpose, following astronomical alignments and spiritual beliefs. It wasn't just a settlement, it was a cosmic diagram carved into stone. Tulum's layout shows a deep balance between the earthly and the divine. The city's three walls, up to 5 meters thick and 3 meters high, speak to its concern with both defense and sacred order. Inside the walls, temples and altars follow precise orientations, often northeast, southwest, or east-west, reflecting Maya interest in Venus, the moon, and the solar calendar. The main structure is El Castillo, not a castle, but a temple pyramid. It stands at the cliff's edge, serving as both shrine and beacon. During certain times of year, the sun rises directly behind it, illuminating its facade in perfect symmetry. Scholars believe this helped the Maya mark solstices and equinoxes for ritual timing. Beside it is the Temple of the Descending God, named for the winged figure above its entrance. This upside-down figure likely represents a fertility or celestial deity. The temple faces west, catching the setting sun and symbolizing transition, day to night, life to death, core themes in Maya belief. Many buildings are built on raised platforms and aligned precisely to track celestial events. Even windows and doorways frame solar or lunar phenomena at specific times of year. Tulum's design wasn't just defensive, it was a calendar etched in architecture, where daily life merged with the cosmos. El Castillo, the city's most famous building, towers over the sea. Set atop a cliff, it's part lighthouse, part temple. Though not as massive as other Maya pyramids, its location and symbolism made it critical. Built in phases, it likely served many roles: shrine, lookout, signal tower. By day, El Castillo's high position and pale stone made it a visible marker for Maya sailors in dugout canoes. At night, fires lit atop the structure may have acted like a lighthouse. Paired with aligned windows and gaps in the nearby coral reef, the glowing structure helped mariners navigate safely to shore. This may be one of the earliest lighthouse-like buildings in the Americas. Spiritually, El Castillo was likely dedicated to the descending god linked to Venus, a planet central to Maya belief. Venus governed war, crops, and sacred timing. Structures like El Castillo tracked its movements. On key calendar days, the sun rose or set directly in line with the temple, filling it with light, a moment of cosmic harmony. Though modest in scale, El Castillo's elevation ensured it could be seen across the landscape. Ceremonies were likely held at the top, visible from plazas and the coast below. Unlike massive temples inland, this wasn't about size, it was about purpose, guiding travelers, channeling cosmic energy, and linking sky and sea. At the heart of Tulum stands one of its most symbolic buildings, the Temple of the Frescoes. It may not be tall, but it draws attention through detail. This multi-level complex is filled with sacred images, carved symbols, and some of the best-preserved Maya murals on the coast. It served both ceremonial and astronomical functions, showing the city's deep, spiritual identity. Tulum's Temple of the Frescoes served both as a shrine and an observatory. The upper floor likely functioned as a ceremonial space for priests, while the lower chamber displayed vibrant murals and stone reliefs that illustrated the Maya cosmos. Although time and weather have faded much of the original color, enough remains to offer an impressive glimpse into Maya spirituality. Inside, the frescoes showcase a complex pantheon of gods, supernatural beings, and mythical scenes. One of the most notable figures is the descending god, depicted upside down, a rare image in Maya art. This deity, associated with Venus, fertility, and perhaps bees, appears throughout Tulum, emphasizing his importance to the city's spiritual identity. The murals also portray creation myths, underworld journeys, and celestial conflicts. Symbols of the sky, earth creatures, and cosmic elements are painted in a swirling narrative, reflecting the Maya belief in a layered universe. The heavens above, the earthly realm, and the watery underworld, all represented in vivid visual form. Outside, the temple is decorated with stucco masks and niches, some of which may have held offerings or small idols. Columns supporting the portico give the building an appearance somewhat reminiscent of Greco-Maya architecture, a rare feature in the region. Astronomically, the temple appears to have been aligned with solar events. Its windows and openings may have tracked solstices or equinoxes, helping priests maintain a sacred calendar. It was both a sacred sanctuary and a tool for measuring time, functional as well as symbolic. Among Tulum's sacred structures, the Temple of the Descending God stands out as particularly enigmatic. Although small in size, it is rich in symbolic meaning. The temple is devoted to one of the most mysterious figures in the Maya belief system, shown upside down with arms outstretched and a flared headdress or wings appearing to descend from the sky. His image is found throughout Tulum, suggesting a celestial protector watching over the city between sea and sky. Positioned just west of El Castillo, the temple sits atop a small platform. It contains a single-room sanctuary, a narrow staircase, and a prominent niche above the doorway. Inside that niche is the temple's defining feature, the stucco relief of the descending god, head first, knees bent, seemingly caught mid-fall or flight. His true identity remains unknown, but scholars have linked him to Kinich Ahau, the sun god, or possibly a bee deity revered for its role in pollination and honey, both vital to Maya ritual and agriculture. The descending pose is highly unusual. In Maya art, where deities are typically shown seated, upright, or in battle, this inverted position may symbolize spiritual descent, a divine messenger bridging realms. Some researchers connect him to Venus, the morning star, a celestial body. Associated in Maya astronomy with war, renewal, and sacrifice, the temple's alignment enhances this symbolism. At certain times of year, it captures the setting sun's light in a dramatic display. These alignments likely marked ritual dates or seasonal changes. To Tulum's priests, these were not just beautiful moments, they were sacred events. Inside, the temple likely held ceremonial items, such as incense burners, offerings, and possibly the remains of elite individuals. Though modest in size, it was a place of deep religious meaning, where priests interpreted omens and performed rituals under the figure's watchful gaze. This winged, upside-down figure became emblematic of Tulum itself, a city at the junction of land, sea, and sky, and a place where cosmic cycles intersected. While Tulum is widely recognized for its sacred buildings and celestial alignments, its defensive structures tell another story, one of strategy, protection, and political awareness. In contrast to many Maya cities that spread openly across the land, Tulum was fortified. 3 thick stone walls enclosed the inland sides, while a steep cliff formed a natural barrier along the sea. Tulum was not only a spiritual center, it was also built for defense. Even today, the walls are impressive, up to 5 meters thick, and equally high in places. Narrow entryways ensured that intruders entered one at a time, making defense easier. These weren't symbolic dividers. They were designed for real threats from pirates or rival cities. Strategically placed along the walls were round watchtowers with narrow slits, offering clear views of both sea and land. From here, guards could detect approaching canoes well before they reached the shore. These towers might have also served as communication points, sending signals via smoke or fire to alert city leaders of any approach. Yet these defenses had more than a practical function. Spiritually, the walls separated the sacred from the ordinary. Inside was holy ground, aligned with the stars, resonant with ritual. Outside lay the unpredictable world of politics, warfare, and wilderness. Tulum's location offered control over both land and sea routes. It sat along a key Maya coastal trade corridor through which goods like salt, honey, jade, obsidian, and cacao moved. Merchants sailing by would have seen Tulum's silhouette on the cliff long before arriving, a powerful symbol of authority and safety. Here, strength and spirituality coexisted. Long before colonial harbors, Tulum thrived as a maritime hub, connecting inland cities with the Caribbean. Its location was strategic, not chosen merely for beauty. Perched above calm beaches ideal for landing, it was built to facilitate exchange. The Maya were expert mariners, carving large dugout canoes from hardwoods. These vessels could carry up to 30 people and substantial cargo. Traders traveled up and down the coast, reaching as far south as Honduras and as far north as the Gulf. Taking advantage of prevailing currents and steady winds, they navigated well-known routes that made Tulum a vital stop. Goods arrived from all directions: obsidian, jade, and cacao from the highlands, salt, fish, cotton, honey, feathers, and shells from coastal areas. Tulum wasn't the source of all these products, but served as a distribution hub. Here, items could be stored, taxed, and rerouted. What set Tulum apart was its combination of maritime access and strong defenses. Unlike unprotected coastal towns, it could regulate and safeguard trade. Merchants entering Tulum likely passed through checkpoints. Goods were tracked, tributes collected, and rituals possibly conducted to bless the exchanges, highlighting how closely commerce and religion were linked in Maya society. Imported items suggest contact with distant regions, including central Mexico and the Gulf Coast. Tulum was part of a broader network, connected through trade, culture, and shared belief. Canoes likely landed on beaches below the cliffs. From there, goods were carried into the city, exchanged, and sent inland to cities like Koba. Tulum was Not just a physical crossroads, it was a cultural one, where identity, economy, and religion met. For centuries, Tulum flourished as both a spiritual sanctuary and commercial center. But like all great cities, its prominence eventually faded. By the time the Spanish arrived in the early 1500s, Tulum still stood, its walls and temples intact. But its golden era had passed. Its decline appears to have been gradual, not sudden. There's no evidence of war or violent destruction, no mass burnings or conquests. Instead, Tulum seems to have slowly lost relevance. As trade routes shifted and larger cities like Chichen Itza and Mayapan rose and fell, Tulum's influence waned. Broader regional challenges, like political instability, population decline, and environmental stress, also played a role. Drought and soil exhaustion likely impacted food production, even in coastal regions. These pressures reached Tulum eventually. In 1518, Spanish explorer Juan de Grijalva sailed past the city. His crew noted its large stone buildings and impressive walls. A few years later, Hernán Cortés passed by again, commenting on its beauty and the prominent cliffside temple, but the Spanish did not conquer Tulum immediately. By the late 1500s, Tulum was abandoned. Whether due to disease, disrupted trade, or cultural upheaval from colonization and Christianity, its people gradually left. What remained were empty temples, weather-worn walls, and echoes of past ceremonies. Unlike many Maya sites swallowed by jungle, Tulum remained visible, its ruins perched above the sea, a haunting silhouette for passing sailors. It never fully disappeared, but it wasn't until the 1800s that Tulum re-entered historical awareness. In 1842, explorers John Lloyd Stevens and Frederick Catherwood visited during their Maya expedition. Stevens, a U.S. diplomat, and Catherwood, a British artist, were among the first Europeans to document the ruins in detail. Catherwood's illustrations, especially of El Castillo and the Temple of the Descending God, captivated European readers, making Tulum one of the most recognizable Maya sites. Archaeological efforts increased in the 20th century. The Mexican government began preserving structures and clearing vegetation. Unlike remote jungle ruins, Tulum was relatively easy to access, attracting not just researchers but tourists, photographers, and spiritual seekers. Today, Tulum is one of Mexico's most visited archaeological sites. Thousands walk through its gates daily, past temples once aligned with the stars and walls that once protected sacred ground. Visitors stand where Maya priests once observed Venus and where merchants once arrived by sea. But Tulum's true power lies in what it continues to uncover. Modern tools like LiDAR and satellite imaging are revealing more about its layout and links to cities like Coba. Scholars still debate the identity of the descending god, the exact purpose of El Castillo, and the reasons behind Tulum's decline. Despite the questions, Tulum endures as a testament to Maya resilience, architectural mastery, and cosmic understanding. It reminds us that ancient people weren't disconnected from the universe. They built their lives around it. Tulum is more than stone ruins above the ocean. It's a legacy of a civilization that sought harmony with the cosmos, and every sunrise that hits its walls reawakens that ancient vision.